That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Maria, the 11th film directed by Pablo Larraín, which is the third and final, thankfully, entry in his biopic trilogy. It premiered in competition at the 2024 Venice Film Festival. Netflix is giving it a limited theatrical window starting November 27th, before it will be available on their streaming platform December 11th.
So the other two films are Spencer and Jackie.
Yes.
And this is kind of in a similar style.
Well, especially to Jackie, which is a fictional, the subject being interviewed. And then the similar thing is going on here. But I will say about Larraín, I still think his best works are his early Pinochet trilogy, including Tony Manero, Postmortem, and No. We did review his last feature previous to this, El Conde.
Okay.
El Conde.
What is Maria about? Maria Callas, the world's greatest opera singer, lives the last days of her life in 1970s Paris as she confronts her identity and life. What is your pull quote?
An utterly empty spectacle formatting Maria Callas, one of the greatest opera singers ever to have lived, into a fussy, pill-popping dullard dressed in cliched anguish. The entire affair is a poorly staged lip sync inspiring a whole new subgenre, damp camp.
Wow. Mine. Maria plays like a tedious, boring, operatic version of Mommy Dearest. In short, unfunny camp.
Oh. I mean, I've had to sit through this insufferable film twice.
You saw it in Venice.
I saw it in Venice, and I talked to a lot of people that loved it there. Variety has a pull quote that thinks Maria Callas would be proud of this film. I didn't know the woman. She's been dead a while, but I doubt that.
Well, okay. So the movie is set September 1977 in Paris, and basically it's the final week of her life. And Angelina Jolie plays Maria Callas, the most famous opera singer ever. And as I was thinking about it, I thought, okay, if a person knows nothing about her, you will leave this film knowing that she was a popular opera singer who stopped singing because she felt like she had lost her voice, and also because she was maybe like in an act of defiance, wanting to take back control of her life. She was also in a relationship with Aristotle Onassis, who then ended up with Jackie Kennedy. She, it would seem, was pimped out by her mother for sex to Nazi soldiers. Don't know where that happened.
Athens in the 40s.
In Athens? Yeah. Okay. Because she also said she was born in New York. And
she was, and I had to research that. Her parents divorced, and she moved with her mother to Athens.
So you would know that, and that she spent the last years of her life living in this beautiful apartment in Paris with her housekeeper and her butler.
Bruna and Ferruccio.
You will also know that she likes popping pills.
Oh, yeah.
And specifically a drug called Mandrax, which apparently is a hypnotic sedative, like a Quaalude.
So you can't get those anymore.
Which is important to the story because the narrative is framed around her doing a television interview with a reporter named Mandrax. But immediately as the audience, we understand it's all in her head.
And Mandrax is played by Kodi Smit-McPhee.
But the film, it's broken up into chapters, and I thought, or acts, and I thought that, like an opera, I guess, and I thought that it was pointless because I feel like it's all over the place. We're flashing back and forward. Yeah, that is basically the story.
Yeah, it's pretty dull and it's trying way too hard. I think the script by Stephen Knight, who can be a good writer. I mean, I really liked Locke, and he was nominated for an Oscar for writing Dirty Pretty Things. But wow, I really dislike the dialogue in this.
It really does feel like Mommy Dearest, and Angelina feels like Faye Dunaway as Joan Crawford, except without any of the fun or outlandishness of it. It's just very superficial.
I mean, she fusses and screams, but all of it is...
But not really, because she calls herself the La Diva, the prima donna. Like, I was expecting someone to be just vile and over the top, and I thought that she seemed pleasantly fussy. She's not a mean lady.
No.
And she doesn't stomp around. She really doesn't yell at anyone.
She yells at a fan.
But yelled. So she's sitting in some cafe and a fan says, you broke my heart. And she goes, oh, which aria? He's like, no, I bought tickets to your show, bitch, and you canceled. And you would also know that she was known for canceling shows because she was sick, and apparently people didn't believe her.
Like Fantasia?
The Color Purple. But she snaps back at him, but she's not screaming at him. She just kind of gets him together. Like, I really was sick, and I know you don't believe me, but I was. But that's the most aggressive we see her.
Yeah, she has a couple other ruffled feather moments.
I didn't think she came across as she comes across as difficult because she wants to do what she wants to do. But she's also very appreciative to the two people in her life, her maid and her butler.
Played by two heavyweights of the Italian film industry, Pierfrancesco Favino and Alba Rohrwacher, both whom I really like outside of this film.
Her butler has more to do. The maid is really just... It really did remind me of Mommy Dearest. Like these background supporting characters who are witnessing this lead act crazy.
And hopelessly devoted to them, but really what makes me feel bad for those two is like, yes, they care about their employer, and I get that, but what's going to happen to them when she dies or something drastic happens? Because it seems like that no one's addressing, like, what's going to happen to you when she can't, this mutually beneficial relationship goes out the window.
I have a lot of notes. First, so I knew we were in trouble because the opening of the... Okay, let me start off with what I liked. I think it's beautifully shot.
Ed Lockman, who works with Todd Haynes quite a bit, Carol and Far From Heaven, it is beautiful.
Set design, costume design, I think it all looks pretty lush and...
It'll make you want to go on a walk in an autumn afternoon in Paris.
Yes.
That's what it inspires.
Her apartment's fabulous. Angelina looks great, although I think she's miscast.
I think she's horribly miscast, and I don't understand the blind devotion to this performance that I've read so far. I just don't.
But I knew we were in trouble because the film opens and we see Maria awakened by her maid and in her beautiful bedroom, and she gets up. And it's clear that she is very sort of self-absorbed, and she floats into the living room, and she's asking her butler to, like, we see her butler moving a piano, which is something we'll get back to because it's like a big symbol in the movie that he keeps moving this piano back and forth. But she gets into the kitchen and grabs some raw meat to feed her two dogs. And she grabs this meat and feeds it to them, and presumably all this raw meat juice is all over her hand, and she's rubbing it in like lotion, and then she goes to touch her maid, and I was howling. But then where things really go off track is Maria asks her maid to listen to her sing, to sort of get like an impression of how she's doing. And as Maria is singing opera, the maid is cooking an omelet, and the way it's shot, and the sound editing of like the grease frying and the pan flipping, I knew this was going to be unserious. Unserious,
but it's not tragic yet. It's just like, okay, these choices are being made, and you're like, this is going to be interesting.
Right. But then the dialogue. Everything out of Maria's mouth feels like whoever wrote it wanted just everything to be poignant and meaningful, and it comes across as... I mean, it's laughable.
It's Stephen Knight is the screenwriter. Some of that spell works on people, I guess, because I just saw it a second time. The lady next to me was sobbing several times at some of these very pretentious quips.
But also people were giggling a lot.
Yeah.
Like laughing at the movie. So I'd be surprised if this gets universal critical acclaim.
I don't know. I think Jackie and Spencer were better, but those films also were highly flawed. But you know what? Like, you didn't see Spencer. Both Natalie Portman and Kristen Stewart were led to Oscar nominations for their roles in this, so I'm assuming we'll have the same for Angelina. But at least with Kristen Stewart and her iffy British accent as Princess Di, she made me feel something. I was able to empathize with her.
And in Jackie, the device of being interviewed, right,
yes,
is what's similar to this film. So in this film, straight away, her butler is telling her, I made a doctor's appointment for you because clearly there's something not right. She's popping all these pills. Maria does not want to see the doctor, but she does tell her staff, like, oh, a television crew's coming to interview me later today, so why don't you clean up? And they're like, are you sure about that? And so it's clear that maybe like she likes to either lie or maybe she's hallucinating. And she even addresses it, like whether or not this film crew is real is none of your concern. which is another point I want to get back to. But all of a sudden, this television crew shows up, 2 people. And the reporter, who's played by
Kodi Smit-McPhee,
he is named Mandrax. And we had already seen that her pill bottle is the drug Mandrax. So we know that this is in her head. And he just starts talking to her. And again, the dialogue from Maria, she's just being quippy. And like, I feel like whoever wrote this was trying to make her so fabulous. But it just comes across as like she's half Looney Tunes. It's, to me, it's more comedic than anything.
But flat comedy. It's one note throughout.
So she starts the interview, and it's a little rough because she's trying to control the interviewer. And then she says, well, I have to leave. Well, you said we have 3 hours. Well, if you want to follow me for 3 hours and walk through Paris, you can. So she's walking through Paris, and that's when we get a couple of moments where, like, there's... How would you describe it? Like, where people are being, like...
the world,
information.
The world, yes, Beyonce. The world gets information around her and sings to her. And I didn't like, that was used several times. I didn't like that either. But the second time that happens in the rain, one of the worst scenes in the film. Where Mandrax is shouting at her to sing. Oh, terrible.
Well, I feel like I'm all over the place, like the movie was all over the place. But talking about the singing, there's this idea that she has lost her voice. But in the beginning of the film, we hear her sing. And to my ignorant ears, I thought she sounded great. So I was confused, like, did her voice deteriorate that much that she can't perform anymore? And then she is talking to Mandrax. Then at one point she walks into a theater, and now Mandrax, the reporter, is gone. And now there's this pianist who I also thought was so annoying.
Almost any scene with somebody that's outside of the main trio is especially bad. But yes, Stephen Ashfield.
And basically saying that he wants her to perform and they can work it out. And she's being a little fussy, doesn't want to sing, but ultimately does go back. And you know, the story is framed around this week, like the final week of her life. So we see her go back a couple of times to sing. She, at the final session of her singing, there's a reporter there. And the reporter hears her sing, and she does this beautiful rendition of something that, again, to my ears sounded lovely.
The madness scene from Anna Boleyn.
But it's not until the big final note at the end that she cracks a little. So, of course, she's emotional about it. She has also had her maid record it. Because something Maria says that I find annoying is she goes, I never listen to my voice on record because it's perfect, and that's not what music's supposed to be. And
Like Nicole Kidman.
But then she has, now that she's decided she wants to sing, she wants her maid to record her. So as they're leaving the auditorium, the reporter approaches her, and I thought that scene was so crazy. I'm a reporter for blah blah blah, and I listened to your performance, and it was bad. I have to tell you, it was not good.
It was not so good, yeah.
And I need you to explain to your fans why you sound like this. And I'm sure that she was confronted with that, but the way it plays out is laughable. And then there's like a tussle. They get into the car, and as they're driving away, Maria asks her maid to play the recording, and the maid is like, I don't think that's a good idea, because you sound so terrible. But then they play it, and it's like, she does sound beautiful. So I'm so confused with how she feels about her voice. And then that leads me to my pull quote about it feeling superficial. Because Maria, as like a person, like if I knew her, I would think she's kind of basic. Because all she ever talks about is this person's fat, they're ugly, they're old, they're rich. Okay, but what's the context? Like, Angelina Jolie being miscast to me in part is because Maria talks a lot about how she used to be fat.
Maria Callas did lose a lot of weight, yep.
And we see her in a flashback back when her mama was pimping her out. And she is like a healthy-sized teenager.
But it's like, when did you start looking like a plump Greek girl and turn into Angelina Jolie with her blue eyes?
I think that to cast Angelina Jolie and to keep making mention of how she used to be fat, someone has some explaining to do, because Angelina Jolie looks skeletal.
Yes.
She's not thin. Maria Callas was a petite lady at the end, but she wasn't skeletal. No. So I think it just looks crazy that Angelina's playing this role, and they keep talking about how she used to be fat, and they don't mention anything about like her weight loss.
Well, everything is so vague. They mentioned certain performances of note or skipped performances, but there's really nothing that seems for sure. Like they completely skip over, Pasolini's Medea, which we rewatched very recently.
Yes.
And talking about, I don't really understand how she feels or when certain things happened.
Well, she also talks about being ugly, and it's like, well, the young lady playing her in flashbacks favors her, so she's beautiful. I don't get that. Okay, then a big part of the movie is her relationship with Aristotle Onassis. Mm-hmm. And the way it plays out, you would think that he was the love of her life. But we get no idea of how she really felt about him. We see the moment they met and one trip they took, and then the time that he took her to John F. Kennedy's birthday party where Marilyn Monroe sang happy birthday. And not once did I get the sense that they had this love for the ages. But then at the end, she shows up at his deathbed in Paris. Mm-hmm. And he's professing his love to her. Like after death, he has some metaphor about him sitting by the ocean in Greece, like his spirit, and he wants her there with him. He'll bring 2 fold out chairs so they can sit in them. And it's like, I did not get that they felt that way about each other at all.
No. And then they're like, Mr. Onassis, your wife is here. Somebody in the second audience I saw it with gasped. Like, no.
Well, then we also get JFK, basically hitting on Maria Callas. And she has a line that I wrote down because I thought it was interesting because it's simple but profound. She's telling John F. Kennedy, we're kind of similar in that we can go wherever we want, but we can't get away. And so if you, out of context, you would think, oh, this woman felt so isolated because she was this star who felt like she couldn't be or exist. But then all we get from her in the movie is that there's a moment when she asks her butler, schedule me a reservation at a cafe where they know me because I need some adulation today. Never once did I get the sense that she wanted to shy away from the spotlight. So why does she stop singing then? Because her voice doesn't sound that crazy and she likes the attention and she still looks great.
Well, Angelina Jolie most certainly does not look like a woman that's on the verge of liver failure.
We're told that she is about to shut down. Then the doctor. Literally every character is so crazy to me.
Vincent McCain is the doctor, and his introductory scene he has a line. I didn't even write it down, but I remember it. He's like, Madam, I need to have a conversation with you about life and death, sanity and insanity.
I giggled and rolled my eyes. Then at the end, when he brings back they draw her blood. And we don't see them draw it, but the report that he gives from her blood test, you would think, I don't know how long it took for them to run these tests. It's 1979.
Less than a week, for sure.
But it's less than a week. And he comes back with liver failure, kidney failure, heart disease. There are all kinds of drugs in your system. And then he tells her, I understand you want to sing again, but I think the stress from singing and all the drugs you're going to do to maintain it are going to kill you. And it's like...
Meanwhile, she looks like she's about to walk a runway somewhere. There were a lot of callbacks to Jolie herself more than Callas. Like that scene where she's dressed as a geisha reminded me of that scene in Gia.
That was a laughable moment when she's dressed up as the geisha. But I did want to mention, since I like to call out HIPAA violations, when the doctor is first telling Maria Callas about what he understands about her, she makes a comment that her butler doesn't understand that sharing her private medical situations is a violation. So I thought that was funny, that she didn't know that was not... But even then, she says it in such a delightful way, as if she is appreciative. She even tells her butler that a chapter in her book is going to be, what's his character's name?
Ferruccio.
The day Ferruccio saved my life. And he goes, well, what day is that? And she goes, every day. She's so lovely to them. Where is this diva? Where is this bitch from hell? Where is this? Well,
granted, she was probably painted like that in the press, because there's that one famous scene of her where I think she's being served some kind of, is it a subpoena or some paperwork, and the press got a snapshot of her basically snarling. And I think that's really where that kind of toxic imagery of her started to take shape.
This almost feels like whomever made the movie, like they were trying to honor the estate, like the family didn't want. But I don't, like, who...
I don't know, she didn't have children, so...
Why are they handling her with kid gloves? Also, her vanity, like, when we first meet her, she looks amazing. I will say her hair, when it's styled in a certain way, looks fantastic. When it's down, it looks very wiggy, but she looks very fresh throughout. But then towards the end, over the course of 1 week, she looks like she's aged 10 years.
She becomes Sophia Loren circa 1995. Yes.
I was very confused by that. We start to see more gray in her hair. Her features look a little more like sallowed, but I don't understand how that happened in 1 week. So that was very strange to me.
I mean, these kind of fantastical reimaginings can be very hit or miss, and I think this is a pretty big miss. And I think we both referenced Blonde after we saw it yesterday, the Andrew Dominik film about Marilyn Monroe, which also has a significant JFK scene. That and again, the liberties taken. We can blame Joyce Carol Oates, really, probably, but I much prefer that.
My problem with Blonde was this idea of like reinventing an actual person's history and making it seem so unfavorable is what didn't work for me. But I do think Ana de Armas's performance was great, and I do think the intention was there to create something spectacular. So yeah, I do appreciate that movie more than this one.
But that movie really kind of gets into the mud of like the terrible things that most likely happened to this person or what shaped them, and kind of this incessant trauma that is foisted upon women in the spotlight.
Well, speaking of that, we understand that we're told by Maria and Aristotle Onassis that he stopped her from singing. But that's it. There doesn't seem to be any contention. There's the party scene with JFK where we can tell, because that's the third time that we see them together. And it's obvious that his attitude changed very much from the first time he met her, where he said he was in love with her and didn't even know her, to now he's like annoyed by her and some fan runs up and he's rude. But I didn't get any sense of how he affected her life, except they tell us that he stopped her from singing. Why?
It strangely seems like it's trying to cover too much while also placing within a 1 week time frame. When we were talking about things that I feel would have worked a little better, and one is that they reference her canceling a performance in Milan, and then the natives hated her for it, and she went back and returned and spilled her vitriol on them. And it's like, I think
that should have been the movie.
We should have contained it maybe just to
one performance,
a moment that encapsulates kind of the life experience this woman might have had.
Okay, I want to go back to her childhood, because we see that she has a sister, an older sister.
Valeria Golino plays her sister, and I did like that scene.
That's probably the best scene, and it's because of the sister and that actor's performance.
Golino, yeah.
But we get a flashback to them, I guess, in Greece, where these Nazi soldiers sort of break into their apartment, and their mother's idea to soothe them is to have the two daughters sing.
I think the mother arranged it.
Oh, she arranged it?
Because right after they're done singing, she's like, okay, pay me 100 drachmas or whatever, and they're like, what else do they do?
So we find out that the older sister is more of a mover and is prettier, while Maria is the singer. And then we see that the mom is pimping them out for sex, because we see Maria go into the room with one of the soldiers and she begins to undress when the soldier says, no, sing. And she sings probably the best musical moment of the film is the younger Maria singing a song I did recognize.
From Carmen.
Oh, right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the best music moment.
So I feel like that's a really big moment that gets glossed over. Like, wait, your mama was pimping you out? Because then an hour later in the film, we have the older sister in modern time, like in 1977 during this week, come visit Maria and tells her, like, I can't be a part of your drama. You are holding on to the past. I'm trying to move forward. I don't know why you're letting the things that happened in Greece define who you are, but I don't know what those things are. Because I thought, was it the prostitution or was it Aristotle Onassis? I don't know what she's talking about.
Probably both. It sounds like a lot.
We also know that Maria's butler and maid took all her pills and threw them away. But not to worry, because Maria had her sister mail her a bunch from Greece, like in a week, got all the, like overnighted her a bunch of pills. Mm-hmm. So the sister's saying, I'm not going to mail you any more pills, and you need to get your shit together. And I just wanted, even that would have been a great premise for a movie. What if Maria met with her sister the final week of her life, and they're having this discussion and we get flashbacks and understand her life? I think that could have been a better framing.
Oh yeah, and much more personal. I mean, Golino saying like, you need to close the door.
Yeah.
I mean, but notably, it also maybe, I think Joan Crawford's mother did that to her as well. She prostituted.
Well,
her
again,
daughter.
mommy dearest.
Yeah.
The Maria and Aristotle Onassis talk about how he's old and ugly, and people question her about like, oh, this old ugly man. But then we see that she's married and to an old ugly man. So I'm confused. Like, what?
Well,
And then we don't ever learn about that husband that she left to be with Aristotle Onassis.
it's funny how we can't imagine somebody actually asking this woman, were you physically attracted to these men?
We don't even know she left her husband. We just know that they both went on that cruise with Onassis, and then she, I guess, developed an on and off again. The relationship is not explained at all. We don't know over what period of time.
This film does not define it, but there was a period. By the time
I know, but the film's not telling you that.
By the time she did Medea for Pasolini, the only reason she agreed to do that film was because she had been left. And the themes of that play, of course, had some intersections with her own life. But we don't talk about how long or when, or we just know that Onassis, didn't marry her, but he married Jackie.
Right. Okay, there's this thing that happens several times in the movie where Maria has her butler and maid move her piano.
Oh, I got
from one room to the other. It happens like 4 or 5 times.
I got so tired of that.
And it's boring, or it's tedious because she does it whenever they are, like she's trying to change the subject. They're trying to talk to her about her health and stop pill popping. And then she'll kind of deflect and say, I want you to move the piano to the other side of the room. Mm-hmm. And it's just so literal that...
And Ferruccio has a bad back, and it actually isn't really probably good for him to be doing that. But he'll do anything for Madame. And it's like, ugh.
Okay, Angelina's performance. I don't think she looks the part.
Not at all.
But also she sounded to me like Ariana Grande. Mm-hmm. Like very soft and measured and sweet.
And yes, and everything is in this kind of speaking pattern. And of course, like the 2 other women in this biopic trilogy had to have specific speech patterns to convey their characters. But there's nothing Greek about Angelina Jolie to me.
Okay, my final thought is the end of the movie, which I didn't mention. So the end of the movie is the scene opens with her staff knocking on her bedroom door, like, time to get up, and she's not getting up. So they panic, like, oh my God, did she finally die? And then they're banging on the door, and she finally wakes up like, leave me alone. And they say, well, we're going to make you all your favorite foods. Why? She hasn't eaten. We're told she hasn't eaten in days, and she looks like she hasn't eaten in weeks. But they say, we're going to go get all your favorite foods. We'll be right back. So they leave. And then all of a sudden she gets up, and her beautiful apartment is in like the heart of Paris. And it's like on a big, like city center with a lot of people around. And she opens her windows and starts singing.
I don't recall if the windows were open or not.
Well, they had to have been because everyone hears her.
They do, but...
And it stops the entire like town center.
Uh-huh.
So everyone's like stopped and listening in silence to Maria Callas sing, including her staff, who are holding a bunch of groceries, which I think is funny because she's not going to eat.
Including oysters. They're like, bring it up. And then while she's doing that, she has these outstretched Nosferatu hands.
Oh God. I mean, yeah, her claws, because she's so skinny with these long fingers and she has acrylic nails, but she sings herself to death. Uh-huh. She collapses. And I thought the movie should have ended there, but it doesn't. Then we get everyone coming in, like the police and the staff. It felt like a very drawn out ending.
And the doctor having to say, like, I think she died of heart failure. Okay.
great.
Nobody was charged with her murder, so.
And then the final moments of the film during the rolling to the credits is we get archival footage of the actual Maria Callas.
Which should be jarring to people because it...
Who's this lady?
Who's this lady? Is that Maria Callas? Ugh.
Oh, it's streaming on Netflix. I would say check it out if you're interested. Seeing Angelina Jolie in anything is breathtaking because she is a beautiful creature.
She's a transfixing creature.
Transfixing is a better word, but I think that the reality is she's like a creature in her, more mature age. So like watching her play Maleficent, she was perfect for that.
Perfect, but not
even though she didn't give us what we wanted.
Not giving, really. But
in
that's
this movie,
partially the script and Disney's fault. But I think you could watch it on silent because it's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? Watch the movie on silent and then play
The actual Callas. That's the other thing.
Alexa, play Maria Callas.
Because this did not inspire me to listen to any of Maria Callas's catalog.
That's the real crime. Usually with these types of stories, what's the first thing you want to do? Get on the computer, your phone, and research the subject. This movie didn't make me want to do any of that.
Nope.
Not a I didn't look up a single thing except to prepare for this review. What would you give Maria?
I have to say that I think Maria, you don't gotta see her. 2 out of 5. And I think that's being very nice, and that's actually for Mr. Lockman.
Well, you're nicer than I am because I gave it 1.5 out of 5. Sorry, girl. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.